we have a massive Dungeon Master's toolbox that is in here now.
Boy, howdy.
And it's full of like every little thing that you would want to pull out of it to make an adventure. I love the damage tables. I love knowing what green ooze does. I like these environmental effects. I like the siege weapons. It really does feel like I have a box of toys in D&D to throw at players.
Yeah, so the chapter that's called the DM's Toolbox is the third chapter in the book. It comes after the first two chapters, which are basically primers for the DM. This chapter, the Toolbox, is more of a miscellany. It's here's a bunch of other things that are likely to come up either when you're prepping for your game or when you're running for your game, or they might not come up at all.
Yeah.
Because they're so varied, we decided a simple alphabetical presentation was the best. And it's very much like a grab bag. You walk into the shed, you look for the tool that you need for the job, you take that tool and you go. This chapter sort of emulates that experience of when firearms become important and you need to know what a keg of gunpowder does.
Yeah.
You go to the firearms and explosives section. If you don't have firearms or explosives in your game, you might never use this section.
I think of it as equivalent to the rules glossary in the player's handbook, although the scale is very different. The rules glossary, you might have 12 entries on a single page. Here, each entry is 1 or 2 pages long, but it covers everything from alignment to creating new monsters to fear and mental stress to firearms, as Chris mentioned, and traps and everything in between.
Like you said, we have chases, running chases, ending chases, mapping a chase. Like this is a little very in-depth on chases. And you also have settings for those chases, like a wilderness chase versus an urban chase. And then you've got like guidance for like creating creatures and magic items and all this other stuff. Like this feels very meaty. This is a lot to work with.
High protein content.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, it kind of feels like you thought of everything that people would want.
And it's a combination of stuff that had existed in the 2014 DMG.
Yeah.
And was sort of
Scattered throughout the 2014
Yes.
DMG.
Yeah.
now consolidated in one place and tightened up, and then adding other topics that have sort of surfaced, and we felt like we could do a more in-depth discussion around.
Well, it was one of the ones that you felt like you could do a more in-depth discussion on.
Death.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no. That section is fantastic.
Yeah.
Dealing with character death.
Exactly. How do you handle death in the campaign? Talking about death scenes, like as a character dies, what can you do to give them a moment
Right.
to sort of close off their story in that moment? But then dealing with the aftermath. Does the character come back? Does the player want the character to come back?
How do you deal with what if everyone dies?
Yes. Yes. It's a vital topic in this game where you're fighting monsters and rolling dice and rolling lots of ones.
Yeah.
And
If the entire party ends up in the underworld,
yes. Another topic I'm glad that we have in this section is a discussion of alignment and how you as a DM use alignment in the game and what alignment represents in the game. I think one of the important things that we call out here is that action determines alignment. Alignment doesn't determine action. It's not, I'm lawful good, ergo I should behave this way. It's, I behave this way, ergo I am lawful good. And if a creature's behavior changes, which could happen for any number of story reasons, alignment can change. Alignment is changeable. And driving that home, I think, is very important. Because let's say the characters meet a goblin on the highway, and that goblin is initially hostile to them. The goblin might have an alignment of neutral evil. But if the characters capture him or convince him to change his ways, that goblin's alignment can change. But it's a question of the goblin's behavior. If the goblin starts to behave in a less neutral evil way, then the DM says, this goblin's alignment's not neutral evil anymore.
Which, by the way, is Bigby's story.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
He started off as an evil NPC, and Mordenkainen took him under his wing and reformed him, and he became good.
But he let him get crushed by a giant.
Yes.
Yeah. And then resurrected by a druid.
Reincarnated. Yeah.
Reincarnated by a druid instead of resurrection. That seems on purpose.
Might have been some unresolved feelings coming to play there.
I don't like Mordenkainen.
He can be a bit of a jerk sometimes.
Yeah. So I grew my hair back. We've got curses and magical contagions. I always love this stuff. Cackle fever, sewer plague. We've got sight rot. Some lovely, lovely little curses to put onto your players.
Yeah, and there's a lot of new text in there about how you as a DM can sort of create a custom curse that sort of fits well into the story you're trying to tell. Because a curse can take many different forms in our game. From the curse of demonic possession to something that is more akin to lycanthropy.
Yeah.
And how do you deal with that in the context of the game? What tools do you have as a dungeon master to sort of realize that mechanically? That's the sort of the heart of the discussion of that particular section.
And this is quite a meaty section on death.
Oh yes, yeah. A nice two-page
this
spread
really covers it.
with a beautiful piece of art
Yeah, that is gorgeous.
of characters making the journey to the great beyond.
And the hands coming out of the water.
Well, that's for you, Todd. Yeah, don't jump out of the boat.
In my head at home, I don't think I'm that creepy. Our house is like our house is black.
Yeah, don't jump into the river Styx.
Yeah,
Bad things can happen there, and that's covered in this section as well.
It is?
Under hazards.
Under
of course it
hazards.
Doors, famously a problem in D&D. I've seen parties die because of doors. I've spent 2 hours in front of a door.
Yes, and one of the reasons why we have a section on that is because one of the things that most often happens in any D&D adventure is the characters come to a locked door.
Yeah.
Or they have to find a secret door in order to, find the hidden vault or whatever. Doors are so present in D&D games that we thought they actually deserved their own section.
Yeah.
And one of the graces that this does is it sort of codifies a lot of facts about doors so that you don't have to repeat them over and over in other places.
Yeah. And you've got a lot of great choices like glass door, metal door, stone door, wooden door.
Yeah, if you ever need to know the armor class and hit points of a stone door, look no further. That information's here.
And also we've got the hit points, the difficulty to open, lock complexities. We've got secret doors and how hard they are to detect. This is so useful. Portcullises often happens as well.
Yeah.
And then we've got dungeons. We've got a lot on dungeons, mapping a dungeon, dungeon decay, and dungeon quirks. There's a massive table on this.
Yeah, this is a sort of compilation of a lot of material that was again, scattered throughout the 2014 DMG, but condensed down to basically help you bring an adventure environment to life. Whether it's a dungeon in an adventure you're running and you want to spice it up a little bit, or if you're creating an adventure set in a dungeon, you can roll on the dungeon quirks table to give some inspiration about why, when, and by whom it was built, and what kind of shape it's in, and what might be in there.
Yeah, it's a good reminder to DMs just how varied dungeons can be.
A dungeon can be inside of a dead beast. You've got some examples here. It's like, well, a dungeon could be made by giants, so everything is a scale that is completely over the top.
Yes.
And maybe more difficult to get around.
And there's a beautiful illustration showing what a giant dungeon ruin looks like.
Yeah. Again,
as
amazing
the halfling
art.
struggles to climb up the stairs.
Yeah. Yeah. Built a dungeon built on top of a cloud, in the sewers, by dwarves, in a volcano, floating on the sea. It's just a lot of hooks to show you that a dungeon doesn't just have to be something underneath the city.
And can be fantastical in itself.
Yeah. I love carved into a meteorite before or after. Because that implies a lot of horrible things.
Yeah. That reminds me of an adventure I ran years and years and years ago where the characters were teleported to a dungeon and they didn't realize it was in a comet that was hurtling toward a planet.
Oh.
And so only later did they realize they're on a timeline.
Yeah.
That if they don't get out of the dungeon, they're going to be destroyed along with the
dungeon
comet.
will destroy you.
Yes.
That is amazing. No, that's fantastic. I love that. Yeah, there's a lot of great hooks on this. And then you've got decay. So if this place has been abandoned, neglected, crumbling, there are dangers that can exist. And you've got very actionable things that can happen because of it. Environmental effects I love. And this is something I constantly would come to the Dungeon Master's Guide for, like when it's extremely hot, when it's raining, how does precipitation make it hard to see the enemy or for them to see you? This all can have a dramatic effect and really flesh out the adventure while you're running it to give it literally atmosphere.
Yes. Yes. And they have these environmental effects have very simple, straightforward rules that you can apply as a DM. And mostly here, we just did consolidation of material that was in the 2014 books, just to make sure it was all in one place.
That includes planar effects that were in the cosmology chapter before, because they can apply not just on the plane they originate from, but also in a place that is affected by the energy of that plane.
Yeah, I mean, because some of these environmental effects make a lot of sense, like extreme heat, frigid water, deep water, extreme cold. But then we have dead magic zone. So the fabric of the weave has been somehow devastated. High altitude, again, terrifying. But then we've got, like you said, the planar effects. The winds of pandemonium. I love using effects like that. And you can always mix and match those if you want to make an environment special.
Yes.
We also have like a section on fear and mental stress.
That's right, yes. So these are effects that often come up in play where characters are confronted with some horror of the far realm or something that inspires such dread that commoners would run in terror and adventurers might do the same under certain circumstances. We've given the DM tools for mechanically, how do you handle fear in the game? Mechanically, how do you handle mental stress? One of the simplest rules in here that I think a lot of DMs can leverage is we have something in the game called psychic damage. And psychic damage is a great way to mechanically reflect mental stress. If an effect is causing mental stress, it is attacking the mind of the character, and that's represented by psychic damage. But there are other types of effects that are talked about in here as well, so that you have some versatility.
You also have like a settlement tracker in here. We've got traps in here, a lot of traps, a lot of poison to choose from, siege weapons, guidance on NPCs, an NPC tracker. This really is kind of like every toy in the box that you need.
Yes, and we've done a few sort of evolutionary things with some of these tried and true dungeon staples. For instance, the hazards and the traps now, you can actually customize. You can essentially up-level them the way you can up-level spells. So if you want a more dangerous version of that hazard, the rules help you create it.
The nastiest quicksand. Fireball fungus is lovely.
Fireball fungus is a small inanimate mushroom that can grow anywhere. Fungi are found in abundance. Its luminous orange cap sheds light, and it can withstand a certain amount of damage, but when you drop it to 0, it detonates as if a fireball exploded in its space. And if you put a bunch of fireball fungi together, they can all trigger their fireball effects. So for low-level play, I recommend only one at a time. But for high-level characters, you put 3 or 4 of those in one place.
Or you march an army into that field. Like
Yes.
You know the field is there, and you have to very carefully run through it. And then an army starts running through there and just starts blowing up behind you.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of the other new hazards that we've created are called vicious vines.
Yeah.
Vicious vines they look like ordinary vines that you might see coiling around a statue in a garden or around an archway in a doorway. But they get pretty aggravated when people get too close to them and can lash out.
We've got webs, we've got razor vine, which people should be familiar with who like Planescape. The river Styx, as you mentioned, a rock slide, inferno, poisonous gas, quicksand. It's so fun to have all these little pieces because each one of them can just trigger an adventure in my mind.
I think it's great to arm the DM with things that are just more than monsters.
Yeah.
So that it helps bring the environment to life, as you say, and it gives them something else to contend with.
Yeah.
They can't talk to the brown mold.
Yeah.
They can't negotiate with it. They just have to deal with it in some other way. And just fun stuff to play with. Like as you're building out a settlement, you as a DM might already have an idea in your head about what that settlement is and what it's like. But if you want to go through the fun activity of just coming up with a random settlement, you can do so now. In fact, let's do so now.
Okay.
Want a dice roller?
Oh yeah, we have a die. Thank you. We'll need a die. So the settlement section talks about, I'm a DM, do I need a map of the settlement or can I get by without one? There's some advice on how to handle that. There's a tracking sheet here that you can use to keep track of important features of your settlement. But first you decide how big is the settlement. Is it a village, is it a town, or is it a city? Let's say it's a town. What is the defining trait of the town? Roll a d20.
8.
8. It's got a sprawling cemetery. Hey, Todd.
Yes.
This is like the place you want to go to live.
Yeah.
Yes. So then the defining trait of this town is it's got a huge sprawling cemetery. What is the town's claim to fame, James?
9.
9. Spellcasters. It has an abundance of spellcasters.
Totally a good sign.
Right. I'm betting a lot of necromancers. Yes.
This is their IKEA. This is their Walmart.
Yes.
Some assembly required. Some reassembly required.
What current calamity is befalling the town? James,
1.
this is a 12. Okay, 1. Monsters infest the settlement.
Obviously.
Maybe some of them are, in
Some of them have
graves.
been made. Yeah, these are the undead that wander.
Maybe they're hiding out in the mausoleums. I don't know. And then local leaders, you roll a d12 and you get
4.
4. An illegitimate leader causing civil unrest. So maybe the mayor died and his son or daughter has just seized the reins of power while other elected officials are trying to install other more appropriate people. There's a tavern in this town that everybody likes to frequent. We're going to have to roll 2 d20s for this one.
20 and 17.
All right. The first half of the tavern's name is The Witch and. This is so appropriate. And then the second part is Satyr.
The
Witch and Satyr.
That's the name
Tavern.
of the tavern.
That's the name of the tavern, The Witch and Satyr. And if you need to know what that building is over there, it's a shop of some kind. You can roll a d20.
19.
And it's a mason. He's probably busy making gravestones. So there you go. Now all you need is a settlement name. Bada bing, bada boom. You've just made a town.
And you can write all that information down on the handy settlement tracker provided in the chat.
And that's so fun too. You're kind of playing a mini game as a DM when you get to roll on a random table.
Yeah. We often talk about rainy day activities.
Yeah.
That something like a random settlement generator is great for. I can't go outside and play today. I guess that's where rainy day comes from. But our D&D game got canceled this week. But I want to be doing D&D. So I'm gonna pull out my Dungeon Master's Guide and do this.
So tell me about mobs. Well, like a great example is 8 zombies are surrounding and attacking a fighter. Like, do they get bonuses because they're a mob?
Right. There's a way to run an encounter, and that is if you're fighting a large number of creatures and they're all basically the same, you can run them all individually.
Yeah.
Or you can use mobs.
Right. It's basically just a way of abstracting the math to say, okay, if there's 8 skeletons attacking the fighter at once, you can roll for each one, but statistics tells you how many of them are going to hit.
Yeah.
And we condense that information onto a table that you can look at really quick to just figure out, okay, 8 of them attack you, 3 of them hit, you take this much damage, and streamline that. And then the flip side is the wizard casts a fireball, how many zombies are in it?
Yeah.
If you don't have 80 zombie miniatures on your battle map and draw the circle and carefully count how many each one, you can use the table in there to give you an estimate of how many.
Because you're getting that cumulative effective damage. And this is extremely helpful. I love running mobs in D&D. So yeah, if you're
I'm glad
being
to hear that.
attacked by 10 zombies and you cast a fireball, you have this pool of damage that you are offing.
Yeah. In a theater of the mind play experience, it's a very fair way to adjudicate the number of targets and the number of hits.
Yeah. We've got a great section on marks of prestige, whether you've given someone a fortification, medals.
Yeah, marks of prestige is a sort of a funny name for alternate rewards.
Yeah.
And not every reward has to be in gold pieces or a magic item. Sometimes the best rewards are the strange ones. You just got a deed to a rundown keep, or you just got a medal which you can wear proudly, or a title that you can bear and walk around with and call yourself by. Or you got a letter of recommendation, which in a story-based game like D&D can be hugely advantageous.
Yeah.
You couldn't get to see the king before, but now you can, because you did this other quest and you got this very special reward. And the Marks of Prestige section just reminds DMs that these things exist and they're great hooks for getting players involved in other parts of your story and campaign.
Yeah.
And we've got a great NPC section, NPC tracker. tables for names that you might want to make up. There's fantastic art of a fire giant being talked to by a mind flayer as an example.
Funny thing about that piece of art, we've done versions of that. The sinister NPC whispering in the ruler's ear a couple of times through the years, usually with humans. So this time I decided to do one that is mind flayer whispering in the ear of the fire giant king. So it's that much more fantastical and threatening.
Yes, and it also helps us convey that NPC is a broad category that doesn't include just humanoids. It can include like monsters or creatures or scaled up people. In the case of a fire giant, that it's very broad. To be an NPC, basically, you're just a creature that can be reasoned with and talked to.
And there's guidance here for detailing them for their personality. And then again, you've got a table on that, like whether they have a pronounced scar, distinctive jewelry, unusual hair color, something to like make them more present in the imagination.
Yes.
Now, it was a missed opportunity not to have a mind flayer sitting on a throne and having a hill giant whisper in his ear. The implications alone.
Hill giant with a headband of intellect.
This is not the big bad villain.
Maybe the hill giant's saying, "You want pepperonis on your brain." Sorry, pepperonis on the brain is very much in my head right now. And
hungry?
Yes, a little bit. So another great thing that we added to the NPC creation bit is for DMs who have a hard time coming up with names on the fly. Some tables that you can use to create a name.
But you also have NPC secrets. You've got rules for NPCs as party members, the comic relief, the curmudgeon, like these very standard reasons to have an NPC there.
Yes, and those categories were very carefully chosen so that you're introducing, our advice to the DM is introduce NPCs who are adding something to the party without being too much work for you.
Yeah.
And so sometimes a party, particularly if they're underpowered in some way, can benefit from an NPC who just fills in something that they don't have. It could be as simple as the milquetoast healer.
Yeah.
This is just a guy or a gal or a thing that delivers healing when you need it and doesn't have much more to contribute to the party than that. As opposed to the dutiful assistant,
right,
or the walking textbook.
Yeah.
These are archetypes of NPCs that a lot of party members would want to have in their group, but aren't going to steal the spotlight away from their characters.
And you get into loyalty, the meaning of loyalty.
Yeah, loyalty is a...
Mutiny. You get into mutiny.
Yes, loyalty is a sort of an optional rule that a DM can dive into for special situations where the characters have NPCs around, and those NPCs' demeanors can change. So if the characters, say, buy a ship and decide to set sail across the high seas, and they hire an NPC crew to do a lot of the drudge work, a DM might want to keep track of that crew's loyalty.
Yeah. And on top of this, we have tons of traps to choose from: falling nets, hidden pits, poison darts, fire casting statues, poison needles, rolling stones, which you have to have, spiked pit. You've got all of these traps that someone would possibly want in a dungeon to like toy around with, adjust, and then you've got like supernatural gifts as well. So you mentioned other different rewards. There are blessings that can happen to these players.
And supernatural gifts were in the 2014 DMG as well. We've picked them up and put them in this section because they are special. And like Marks at Prestige, they're a different kind of reward.
They're great tools for adventure design as you're thinking about how am I going to reward the players for doing this thing.
Yeah.
And they're easier to create than magic items. So if a DM wants to create a new supernatural gift to give to players, there are several models to follow here, but it doesn't have some of the overhead that magic items do.
Oh, okay. Interesting. And then, of course, we have a variety of siege weapons: trebuchets, rams, siege towers, keg launchers, flame-throwing coaches, a flame-throwing coach.
Yes, we had several siege items in the 2014 ones, and we wanted to just flesh out those because they were pretty mundane. It's like we had a ballista, we had the mangonel, but we wanted to give some weird fantasy ones as well, like the keg thrower and basically the medieval tank, the flame throwing coach.
I love these new additions. This really does feel like the toy box. And also very organized.
Yes.
An organized toy box.
If all else fails, alphabetization.
Thank you so much for watching. Every week leading up to the brand new 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide, we'll have new videos and premieres telling you more about the book. To pre-order the 2024 Core Rulebooks digital physical bundle, click on the links in this video description and find out more about all the pre-order bonuses, including frames, backdrops, dice sets, Digital Dragon Art Book, and the Digital Golden Dragon Mini. I'm Todd Kenrick. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like, the subscribe button, and also the notification button so that you're alerted when we have brand new videos about the future of D&D.